Reading from the book of Ezra, chapter 9, verses 1 to 9. After these things had been done, the officials approached me and said, "The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the peoples of the land with their abominations, from the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race has mixed itself with the peoples of the lands. And in this faithlessness, the hand of the officials and the chief men has been foremost. As soon as I heard this, I tore my garment and my cloak and pulled hair from my head and beard and sat appalled. And all who trembled at the words of the God of Israel because of the faithlessness of the returned exiles gathered around me while I sat appalled until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice I rose from my fasting with my garment and my cloak torn, and fell upon my knees and spread out my hands to the Lord my God, saying, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers to this day, we have been in great guilt, and for our iniquities we, our kings, and our priests have been given into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plundering, and to utter shame as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, favor has been shown by the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within his holy place, that our God may brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our slavery. For we are slaves. Yet our God has not forsaken us in our slavery, but has extended to us his steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our God, to repair its ruins, and to give us protection in Judea and Jerusalem." There is an old story about a man walking through the ruins of a great city devastated by war. As he wandered the streets, he wept for his people, who had brought destruction upon themselves. He found a quiet corner, fell to his knees, and prayed. His words were neither accusatory nor demanding. He mourned with deep sorrow, identifying himself with the guilt of his people. The 9th chapter of Ezra records such a scene. After leading a second wave of exiles back to the Promised Land and restoring the worship of God at the temple, Ezra received heartbreaking news. The people of Israel had married from among the pagan nations around them. Far from being social arrangements, these marriages were acts of disobedience with devastating spiritual consequences. Deuteronomy 7 verse 3 and 4 warns, "You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons, or taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods." Solomon transgressed this command despite all his wisdom. The result was the entrance of idolatry into national life, which eventually led to the exile. Ezra immediately realized the danger that hung over his people. With abundant mercy, God had restored them to the land promised to their fathers and given them favor in the king's eyes so that they could rebuild the temple of God and worship him. Yet still again, the people were hastening back to their old sins, the very sins that had caused their downfall. He reacted with horror and shock. He tore his tunic and cloak, pulled out hair from his head and beard, and sat down appalled. Other godly men gathered around him, trembling at the implications of the people's faithlessness. They mirrored the attitude described by the prophet Isaiah in chapter 66, verse 2. But this is the one to whom I will look, he who is humble and contrite in spirit, and trembles at my word. The only thing that Ezra did was to intercede for his people. He dared not point fingers nor separate himself from the sinners. With profound humility, he prayed, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. Verse 6. Like Daniel and Nehemiah, he identifies with the people's sins and pleads for mercy on their behalf. The sincerity of his heart is seen in the question he asks. After all that has come upon us for our evil deeds and for our great guilt, seeing that you, our God, has punished us less than our iniquities deserved, shall we break your commandments again? Ezra chapter 9, verse 13 and 14. Ezra recognized that the exile to Babylon was itself much less a punishment than they deserved for the numerous sins that they had been guilty of. Yet even that was reversed by God's mercy. If now they returned to sin, they could expect nothing but judgment. Finally, he breaks down in heartfelt shame and confession. In verse 15, Behold, we are before you in our guilt, for none can stand before you because of this. When sin is often rationalized, excused, or even celebrated, Ezra's response stands out for its spontaneous sincerity. He trembled at God's word. He was deeply shaken by the disobedience of his people and shuddered at its consequences. He mourned and fasted over their sin, intensely ashamed and grieved at heart because of the repeated dishonor brought to God's name. It was a recognition that they themselves were endangering their already perilous survival as returned exiles, needlessly and brazenly provoking the God of mercy and grace. In a time when the church often struggles with moral compromise, let us have hearts that are tender before God. Let us respond to the presence of sin among us with brokenness, interceding for the church and the nation. Let us confess our senseless disloyalty to God without self-righteous superiority. Let us allow our hearts to feel the weight of our people's sin without distancing ourselves from them. We can do nothing but beg for mercy. We still need intercession today more than ever. We need the ready recognition of sin and a readiness to do whatever is required to clear it out, root and stock. Nothing short of this will do. Only thus can we stand in the gap. Ezekiel chapter 22 verse 30 says, And I sought for a man among them who should build up the wall and stand in the breach before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Let us become willing to stand in the gap, broken by sin before God, and ready to judge and tear it out. Let him find us tender-hearted, not hardened by the world's indifference. A powerful example of intercessory prayer comes from the life of the great missionary Hudson Taylor. He wept and prayed for China with such deep conviction that he dedicated his entire life to seeing the gospel take root there. His prayers were not just words. They were born from a heart that carried the burdens of a people far from God. Let us intercede for our brothers and sisters, for our leaders, and for a world that has turned from God. Let us not be quick to criticize without bowing our knees in prayer. Like Ezra, let us confess, identify with the people, and plead for God's mercy. Let us have tender hearts, hearts that tremble at His word, that grieve over sin, and that cry out for mercy. Let us not merely observe from the sidelines, but stand in the breach. Let us intercede for a generation that desperately needs to return to God. The question remains, will we be the ones God finds willing to stand in the gap? God bless.